are live on Rumble. All right. Hello, everyone. Jace here with Jim. We got a new podcast for you guys this evening. The last one was about Trump and the election and all that stuff, and we thought maybe we'd take a little bit lighter view, lighter topics today. At the end of the last podcast, we kind of got into aliens and whether we thought they were real, stuff like that. And it made me think, what might be a fun episode is to talk about aliens and Bigfoot. Jim brought up the idea of just doing like myths versus facts and more just kind of a general conversation about what are our thoughts on that, because I think it's fun. That's all I got. I'm glad you guys are watching. Please feel free to jump in the chat. If you have any questions, you have any comments, whatever, throw it in there. I'll be monitoring it so we can address it. And say, hey, Jim.
How's it going, everyone? I thought it was we talked after last show about, I think one thing we mentioned was propulsion systems and, observing things in the sky. And I didn't know if our conversation was actually going to be talking about like actual aliens and the abductions and, how deep or which direction it could go. But I think just thinking like maybe it would be easy to start with something like just saying, is it what type of aliens? Is it actual beings flying around? And I think that, maybe that's kind of where we should start it, is like, is there some actual foreign being from another universe or such actually coming here or not? What do you think? Do you think it's interstellar travel, or
you mean like intelligence? We're talking.
Yeah,
is
some
it
type
intelligence?
of intelligence that we are unaware of that exists somewhere else that's coming here to all the things they do.
Right. I do not. I'm a pretty firm believer that aliens are not among us. Now I will say we talked about, some of the footage, see some of the Air Force footage, things like that with the video of these ships that are doing things that aren't physically possible. Like, it's not even like, hey, they're going, Mach 9 and all of our vessels will go Mach 7. It's like they're defying the laws of physics. And that is about the only thing that gives me any pause on it is, what are these things? Because they're not, it's not like the quacks that are sitting on their back porch with a 12-pack and just taking some grainy photo on their phone or something, or video on their phone. I mean, these are respectable, reputable, members of the community, members of the military that have no reason to lie. Like, they've got no skin in the game. That, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's got to be some kind of technology or something like that we just don't know anything about yet. Or that we do and we don't want to admit that we know about yet. That is where I'm leaning. That's where logic takes me, because I can't believe it's aliens. I just can't. What do you think?
Yeah, I couldn't say I believe that it would be like actual aliens doing it. We have maybe it's a form of drone technology that is I think that might be it. But like you said, defying the laws of physics. Movements, the erratic movements that they've seen in some of these things, I think that's where we could say, hey, that's, we don't understand how it does that. We don't understand the physics behind it. One thing else I'd like to bring up is air resistance. Air resistance is, something moves at a certain speed. The materials that are being struck by this air can destroy it. And the even the SR-71 Blackbird traveled so fast. Still, I believe the most fastest produced aircraft ever made. It traveled so fast it had to have titanium was the skin of it, because just striking the air at that speed caused it to be extremely hot, and would, to the point to where most metals just rip apart or not really plausible to be good for flight. So it's really weird to think of it when you think of things like that can move that fast, that these pilots are witnessing, and they're seeing them moving at these speeds. There's a lot just not really that we don't understand about that. And somebody riding inside that, I think, if there was someone actually inside of it, we don't understand the physics, how something could survive those G's, that sudden stopping, that inertia that you would have, and then to erratically move in a different direction. It would damage your body. It'd be pretty bad. So I just don't see how those things would actually an organism driving or flying those things. I think they might be more of a drone.
So you're saying like even if it was alien, you just don't think that an alien physiology would be able to withstand it, or you just think that you're just ruling out the alien aspect of it completely.
I think maybe. No, I wouldn't say that. I think I'm more or less along the lines that I don't think they're piloted by anyone, at least that we could understand, because there are certain laws of physics that maybe a machine can do that we can't do. And I think that that's kind of where I believe those things are more of those type of. But if it's truly alien and we don't understand the technology, we're totally ignorant to actually comment on how they're able to do that anyway. But of course, that's extremely advanced technology. There are movies out there that people could be put inside, submerged in water or things like that, to do interstellar travel in movies. I think like Event Horizon. There's a few other movies that have that, where they put them in water, because that's a way of like shielding your body from that inertia, slow you down because you're in a thick medium. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I don't believe they're piloted, but they could be controlled by something, but I don't know why.
And I think that's the thing that gets me also. In addition to just the fact that I believe it. At the end of the day, I believe we are special. I believe Earth is special. I believe that it was placed here by God. We were placed on it by God, and with the intention of being special. So I don't think there is any kind of life anywhere else. And I haven't seen any evidence that shows that, you'll see, they'll talk about, there was once water on Mars or whatever. And then they extrapolate that, well, if there was water, then there was bacteria. And if there was bacteria, there could have been plants. And if there could have been plants, who knows, or whatever. All as far as I can tell, based on the fact that they believe that there was once water. To me, that is not sound enough evidence to say, yes, there has been any form of life outside of Earth. I just don't believe it. And then I get to, well, let's just play with it, and let's decide, okay, fine. There are aliens. They are flying around. What for? Like I think, if they were that intelligent and they were traveling here, it'd be for a reason. And the reason would have to be, I would assume, which of course I'm basing it on human nature, which is flawed logic in and of itself, but either to invade or to build a dialogue with. I don't know why else. I guess just maybe to inspect or test or whatever. But why haven't they presented themselves? Why are these random, less than detailed images all we've ever gotten? Because if it was us, the first thing we would do is probably land and try to make contact. So why don't they? I don't. I got so many issues with it. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I I think that was my question too. It's the why, and people have said they've been abducted by aliens, and all I have to say about that is that whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I will say this: if it is, and there's traveling from some place far away to come here to probe us, and you think they'd have us figured out by now. They could travel that far across space. I'm pretty
Or
sure they don't have to pick somebody
or
up to
or
figure it
why
out.
wouldn't they take a leader, like a leader or a very successful a high status person, or why wouldn't they choose to abduct or to monitor the best of us instead of this random person in a field in Kansas? I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty weird because I mean, and also it's kind of like whenever there's a fire, they go get the or anything bad happens. Camera crews seem to find the most you know doesn't sound very well on TV, and they become a meme. You know what I mean? We've heard a lot of them. And
Have you noticed how that's like died down?
a little
When
bit.
we were kids, they were all over the place, and now it's died way down. I wonder why that is.
Well, another weird thing I was talking to somebody about the other day was remember that dancing baby thing that was on the internet years and years ago?
Dancing?
It
I
had
don't
like
think
that
so.
dancing baby, and I think it was singing something, but it was went around for a long time. It was like one of the first like goofy, quirky things that was shared on the internet. And that dancing baby thing just came to mind because I just didn't understand why everybody thought it was so funny or so quirky. It was just
If
really weird.
anybody in the chat, you guys watching, if you know what he's talking about, let me know. I'm not. If you remember the name of it, I don't remember that one. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, but anyway, yeah, just to get back to the abductions and getting back to I think the aliens would have figured us out by now. And, I don't know, maybe we're their playground and they're just messing with us to see what we do because, they probably, if they've been watching us for a while, they know that, we end up killing each other and then we don't kill each other. And, so I mean, they've observed us long enough to know they might just be throwing a wrench out there to see what happens.
Yeah, what what did any of that have to do with the dancing baby? I didn't get the segue.
No, I just come back to the It's Baby beat. That was just a quirky thing that was tagging on to your idea about the let's see. Let's try that. Let's see.
Okay. And, yeah, I mean, and that's the thing is, I don't think they would really need to abduct us. If they had that kind of technology where they had interstellar travel, they were able to travel these great distances at you know um, logistical speeds that they could actually do the sort of thing. They wouldn't need to abduct us. I mean, they would be able to find out all the information about us that they needed to find out through papers, through the internet, through whatever. They would need to abduct us. They don't need to abduct a human being to learn our physiology. You can pick up any biology book and learn that. I mean, yeah. So I always thought all those guys. I never had any faith in those, especially because of who generally wound up being abducted. It was always a certain type of person. People from that probably lived near us. That yeah couldn't really articulate very well, and you would wonder why on earth they would want to abduct them. I guess let's zoom back a little bit on it because I think we're both kind of on the same page as far as the video footage and everything. Which, like I said, it is compelling. Some of those videos are compelling. Wondering what those things are because it's something. It's definitely something. There's no denying that now. When we were kids, it was always really grainy, crappy video footage from somebody's camcorder. For those of you watching, probably way younger than us, like the Back to the Future camcorder, if that helps. That movie reference might be
The
too
old
old for
JVC.
you. Anyway, it was always crappy footage, and you're like, okay, whatever, that's nothing. Now it's something, but it's probably something terrestrial that some nation doesn't want to let us know about. So let's zoom back a little bit further on it. Do you think, and I kind of already answered this, but do you think there's do you think there is life out there?
In the as a Christian, I believe our planet is unique as well. And I believe that everything that we have is, but everything's been created for us, is what we've been told. It's God's creation. Um, and from that, looking through that lens, I would have to say, well, absolutely not. It wouldn't make sense, right? But and then you step aside and you take your scientific mind, like observation. And like you said earlier, we have what we call the elements of life that are on Mars. And, or you talk about even like certain bacteria, even here, we have extremophiles that live on our planet. And that gives us the assertion that possibly life could live in an extreme environment on another planet or a moon or some other celestial body. And that in the science realm, that is quite plausible. I mean, really, if you think that life is not unique to the Earth, then that is very plausible. Um, but for me personally, I would have to say no. I mean, I don't. It's hard for me to believe that. But if I think of it as scientifically minded, I would say, well, yeah, it's absolutely plausible because all you need is the elements of life, but you have to have that spark that initiates life, and that's the thing that's missing for even from my faith, from the scientific talk, is something had to start life. Life doesn't come from nothing, so something had to make it move. There's some type of energy had to make that happen.
Well, and that's what throws me off is people talk about that they have found all these other the potential for all these other planets to have those ingredients for life, but it's always past tense. I mean, they haven't found a planet, at least that they can verify, that currently has it. Why is that? How does that work? That all these planets at one time could have sustained life, but coincidentally, none of them did, or none of them do now. And of course, once again, we're talking about the other part of that is everything we're seeing are images that are supposedly, took 2 million years or whatever to get here. So who knows what it looks like now? If you believe that, um, you know, that might be another conversation for another day about the speed of light, and does it really take that long for images to get, or for us to see an image, things like that I've got probably a little bit different view on, because you're more scientific and I'm more, I guess in that realm I'm more conspiracy theory, but that'll be another conversation. But when everything I learn, and this is scientific, everything I see, the the more and more we learn about the origins of life, about the incredible odds for a planet even being in a system and in a location where life could ever even be plausible, then the odds of, number one, nobody even knows where, if you're not a believer, nobody even knows where that spark of life came from. Then the incredible odds of, how did this incredible code of DNA that's in every single cell magically get written over millions and millions of years? I don't think that it's more plausible to think that just because there are 100 billion planets, that there's a good likelihood that life could have grown, because you look at how incredible the odds were that we're sitting here talking. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's that's the life that most scientists are out there trying to find right now. From my understanding, when we are looking for those extremophiles because they would have to be in a primitive state. I don't believe that we would imagine them actually being totally eukaryotes, sentient beings that are actually moving around and have locomotion, around their environment. It would be very, very odd to imagine that anywhere else, because all we know is here. Even they try to take, I guess in some movies, even they want to talk about, if we take plants from Earth and we move them to other planets, that we could grow them there and sustain life, and maybe grow lamps or whatever the case may be. But honestly, I've always felt that the plants and the organisms that live on this planet um, are meant to be on this planet, and they're not meant to be, moved somewhere else. I mean, maybe through a lot of genetic mutation, we could get plants that could do stuff like that. But any type of time we talk about other life, it's never, usually a large eukaryotic organism. It's uh, just single cell organisms. That's all it really ever is. And um, that's the type of life I'm thinking of. I couldn't even imagine a eukaryote. And I agree with you. We're in like the perfect place, in our solar system, the right distance from our sun, the right rotation, a satellite that causes wave motions. I mean, there's too many things that are just too sweet about our sweet spot, that there's even some of these very, very far away exoplanets that they've observed through spectrograms and things like that. That's how they observe things far away. Typically, they can see it. Uh, but yeah, it's pretty darn unique, and I just don't know if that they've observed a planet that could be what they say is in those habitable zones, but all the extra little things that make our planet unique and where it's at, I don't know if we could say, yeah, it's a very, very long shot to see another place like Earth anywhere.
Yeah. Well, and you said that, and then this is probably one that's more in your wheelhouse. That's why I wanted to ask you about it. Why is it? Why would you assume that if there was life, that it would probably be a simple life form? Where do you pull that from?
That would come from just being from our understanding of life, right? Obviously, our and we understand is what's here, and the only thing that we can understand is there's organisms that can live in extreme environments, and so we've obviously witnessed extreme environments in our own solar system. There's a belief that there are organisms that are actually there, and they would be single cell organisms, just like algae or certain bacteria are resistant to different things, and they can live at those extreme temperatures and in those extreme environments. Another great example of that is, if you think about it, Europa is another one that they've always talked about going to. It is but we just in the past 50 years figured out that life can exist on our planet without energy derived from the sun. We Thermonuclear vents is something fairly new to science, and there all the creatures that live around the thermonuclear vents at the bottom of the ocean live off of thermal energy, not solar energy. So that is a unique environment that we just found out in our ocean, which makes me come back to a side note. We should explore our oceans before we really go to start reaching far to like Mars. Maybe our moon is a good shot for now, but I really think our oceans, we don't understand our planet well enough to, or explored it well enough to say we understand this planet. I think we need to do a lot of more research and work. But yeah, I just think it would have to be single cells just because that's the only thing we could think of that could live in those extreme environments.
Yeah, I know, and I do think that's cool, and I completely agree. I don't understand why we don't invest more time and resources into studying our oceans more. When you look at the advancements that have come from that sort of research, and you think about some of those, I forget what they are. If it's a worm or whatever it is that can whatever that or it's like a little crustacean maybe. Hello. Okay. Sorry, guys. That can live, on top of those or on those vents. That the methane levels or whatever it is, whatever gas that is, are just before thought unsurvivable by any sort of life form. Things like that. Why aren't we studying that more? Why aren't we mapping the ocean? Why aren't we learning all? Because there's what is it? Maybe what they say, 10% or less of the earth that's or the ocean that's actually been explored. It's a tiny fraction.
Yeah, I would have. It's changed. I've heard a lot. Of course, I studied oceanography, but that's one of those things that I've heard it move left and right. How much because we explore more and more now with satellite imagery, we're able to penetrate the water and map the ground. Map the topography, but actually get down there and see what's swimming around. That's a whole nother issue. I mean, our oceans are as alien to us. We can find lots of aliens all day long if we explore our oceans,
Yeah.
and honestly, there's no money in it. I mean, there's money in trying to go to Mars. Think of all the things you have to do to get just to get a rocket into orbit and then have propulsion system go to another, go to Mars, be on target, all the things that go into it, the outfits, the food, the sanitary things they would need. I mean, all these things they would just have to, figure out. But right here in our oceans, I mean, that's the place I think we should explore because I mean, I, I don't think anybody, with a I don't know. It just makes such logical sense to understand our planet
Yeah,
more, and we
it
should
does.
know it before we try to move to another one.
Yeah, that's, I sit there and think about, NASA's pretty much, defunct now. They're not doing much anything. And I think that's why, because, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. At the end of the day, even if you're funded by the government, you know, you've got to, you got to be profitable. And they've learned that it's not profitable to go into space, which makes me wonder what is Musk's big thing. I mean, he's already come further than NASA has, as far as being able to make a redeployable rocket and do all those things. I don't believe that space travel, like space tourism, can possibly be his motive. I just don't, because no matter how much you charge people, number one, it's going to be a very finite number of people that are going to be able to afford it. Number two, even with people paying $100,000 a pop, it's not going to pay for itself. It's definitely not going to be profitable. Is it rare? Is it rare minerals? Is that ultimately what he's going for? I wonder what his big thing is, what his motivation is with this whole space exploration thing, because he's all for it, and it can't be tourism. I just wonder what the end goal is for him. And I think it's great. I really hated that NASA kind of stopped with space travel because I thought it was really cool. I thought it was amazing. It's and to see those images from the telescopes that they've sent up and everything from Hubble and from that one that deep space one, the galaxies and everything that they've shown. And I mean, it's incredible. I don't know that, once again, there's no money in it, but it's really cool, and for our understanding of our universe, it's definitely a good thing. But I wonder, Musk he's all about making money. So I don't think he's in it for just for spreading knowledge to the masses. I wonder why he's really doing it.
There is some money in space exploration, not only just getting there and all the people that would, all the people you need to create all the technologies to do whatever it is you want to do in that extreme environment. But there's been conversations about people wanting to mine maybe comets or asteroids or any type of interstellar debris that comes flying by our planet. And, some of them they've suspected were just a huge gold nugget just floating around. So you could imagine, if we could figure out a technology to land on one and, chip off some gold or bring some unique ore back to the planet. I mean, that's a moneymaker right there. And not just in, having people, but NASA to, move their stuff up into space and getting a paycheck for doing that. I mean, I had, or maybe it's just he's got the kind of money and decides that he just wants to do it. I mean, you got money like that, I guess you could do it.
He's got that FU money, so why not?
Exactly. So, I mean, I don't see why not. But, one thing I was going to throw at you about our alien conversation was, what are your thoughts on the Roswell crash? It's kind of the thing that started it all. And, I think just for me, what I think is really unique is hearing that the Air Force pilots or the Air Force officer's son that came home with material and showed them. And I think the coolest thing I heard them say was they took that material, it's like a sheet, and was able to crumble it up just like foil. And then after a few moments, it just popped back into its shape without a wrinkle in it, just like it was never crushed before. This very very pliable but yet very hard, rigid material that held its form. It would go back into its original form, almost like a sponge does after you squeeze it. Just goes back.
Yeah, my thoughts on Roswell were always that and this was it was what the height of was it World War II?
Yeah, it was in the early 40s.
Yeah. So in that you know post World War One, and nobody thought the end of World War One was the end of world wars. Everybody knew the next one was coming. So everybody was already kind of ramping up for World War Two. And I'm sure the U.S. wasn't as directly involved, but I'm sure they were ready or trying to get ready. I think Roswell. What I've always thought about Area 51 was that was where they were doing their top secret research on munitions and aircraft and whatever, getting ready for the next war, because we especially back then, well, leading up to the last 15 years or so, we love our wars. um I think that's all it was. I think that's where they were doing their experimental research, and they hid behind the alien thing so that they could, I, maybe it was just a huge deep fake. Instead of people actually trying to find out what was really going on, they kind of they probably propagated the alien myth, um, so that people were looking in a different direction. That's all I think it was.
Yeah, I think the government's been doing that very well for a long time. There's even in the last 10 years with the from what's understood that most of Americans really don't listen to the media anymore because they kind of know that they're not really getting the story they should be getting, and I feel that that may have something to play into it. It's like kind of think for yourself mentality or look at this evidence. But yeah, I really believe that you're probably right. All the whole story they talked about a weather balloon, all the misinformation and not having their story straight, it all just was more or less a smokescreen. And Area 51, I agree with you on that one too. I think it was just we were testing new aircraft because we were always trying to build a bigger, better bomber. I mean, that was always been the thing. We already had the best spy plane you could ever have, so we need to have a bomber that could be invisible to radar. And yeah, back then that shape of an aircraft would have been very, very weird to see. So yes, you could have thought it was alien technology. And oddly enough, most of our aircraft are actually in the shape of birds in flight because
Yeah.
by watching birds, we learn that hey, that shape does this shape does that, and that help us with our avionics.
All right. Well, I think that's about all we got for Alien for now. You guys feel free after the fact, if you guys are watching this, throw something in the comments. If you got something you want to bring up, we'd be happy to do a part B on this and kind of talk about some of these things, because neither one of us claim to be ufologists or expert debunkers or anything like that. So now we're going to move on to to me the far more amusing and interesting topic of Sasquatch. Um, First off, Jim, Sasquatch, real, fake?
I think the jury's out. I really think the jury's out. If we're talking about hunting down, like in my opinion, hunting down the actual being, um, I think the jury's out. I think the biggest thing to discredit is nobody has a good argument against it. The things that if you watch some of these things, you have these scientists because it's kind of crypto science. You're talking about some creature that nobody's seen, but there's a lot of stories out there, and a lot of stories kind of make a lot of sense. I was watched a show one time, and it was talking this. It was I don't know what native tribe it was, but they're kind of like maybe like Cheyenne. They were like up in the Montana area, somewhere up there north. Big sky country. And when the white man came over, they used to have communal relations with these Bigfoot people, and there's stories in their culture about having this relationship, and they warned them that they should not meet and welcome these foreigners from this other land, and that if they were to start intermingling with them, that they would separate their ties from them and then just go away and not lose that relationship. Well, apparently that's what had occurred, and that's why the tribes don't have anything else, I guess, to do with them because those people moved. Of course, this is some old tribe that I saw on a TV show. This old Indian guy was talking about, this is a story from our tribe. I don't know which one it is, but it was quite compelling that I was thinking on the way over here. And, one of the things I think about is like we talk about our oceans and we talk about what we don't know, what we don't see, where we don't have eyes or cameras poking at these areas where like these high Sasquatch or Bigfoot, when I'm thinking like British Columbia type region, it's so remote. No one goes out there. Who's to say it couldn't live out there?
Well, me. But uh, let me ask, the first thing you said really bothers me, that you said that there is no evidence that Bigfoot doesn't exist. I can't prove that Bigfoot doesn't exist. I can't prove a null. You can't prove that Bigfoot does. There is zero evidence. There is zero fossil record. And especially, and I think, if you're talking about 100 years ago, you're right. I mean, there were no video cameras. There was no internet. The communication didn't move at the speed of light. And and then you fast forward to the last 20 years where you've got all these people going to all these places looking specifically for a Sasquatch, and nobody has ever found them. The other thing that I think about is, when you just think about it biologically, in order for a species, and once again, we're not talking about the deep ocean or somewhere where we haven't explored, where we don't even know what's down there, but on terra firma, we know a little bit about biology and about species to have the sort of numbers that it would require for a Sasquatch to continue to exist. There's no way they could be hidden. It would take, you can't have four. You know what I mean? There's got to be a large enough numbers that it is sustainable that the species could continue to go on. And there's just no way they haven't been seen. I don't get it. I know a lot of people believe in it. And you tell me, because I know this is something that you actually have looked into definitely a lot more than me, not that you're, sitting around looking for Bigfoot on the weekends or anything, but you've studied it more than I have. What, other than, whenever I think of Bigfoot and the people that believe it, what all I know of that they're basing it on are the stupid images, that weird, videotape of this
Patterson Gimlin,
of this shady figure walking through the forest. That's all I know. Is there anything more substantial that people are basing this belief on?
Yeah, and the biggest thing about it is, come on. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, everybody has their Sasquatch story and their opinion about it. It's not real. But I mean, to the point to where even if we did take it serious, and there are scientists that have staked their careers just to go find this evidence, and from their findings, they have found evidence, but nobody believes them because, like, dude, you're crazy. And one of the ones I was watching on one of these Bigfoot shows, it was a guy who had done all the castings of footprints, and one of the things that I thought was compelling was extreme remote areas where these things are found, extreme remote, like nobody goes out there. So someone to pull this hoax and it to be freshly done and they not know that something just walked that way, it's kind of compelling. I think one of the coolest ones I heard, but this, believe it if you don't, the guy's just presenting the information. You can do with what you want.
Right. And that's what I'm asking. I mean, I'm not, that's literally what I'm asking, because I want to know more about it. I want to know that I absolutely believed that there was a lot more that people were basing this belief on. Mm-hmm. I just didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
So no, I'm listening. I hear you.
Yeah. So there's the foot impressions are some of the ones that to where it's unknown. And then also having, there's been hair samples found that of certain species, would believe be Sasquatch, that they don't find in the DNA record of creatures as an unknown hair sample. Um, and then also the foot impressions too. They actually look like feet impressions from human and other creatures. They have the right crinkles where they should, and this, I guess you can say how it forms into it and how it smushes. It looks more like someone put their foot down, and I mean their foot is like the Bigfoot's foot down, like something was walking, as opposed to someone making an impression with a stamp. And I think when the one was talking about he was in a remote area and it had just snowed, and he came to this like kind of like a deer trail that was running through the woods, and he saw what looked like a large set of footprints, a small set of footprints, and then like a medium set of footprints, like mom, dad, and baby Sasquatch that were walking down this trail. And they had been, those footprints may have been like 30 minutes ago, because they were very, very fresh and it was still lightly snowing. And he's like, if you look at these footprints, that's quite compelling. He's like, I'm in a remote area. There's nobody, the likelihood that there's three people out here causing this hoax, and all the footprints kind of look like something's walking. It's kind of an odd thing
So,
to make up.
and when you're talking about not in that instance where you're talking about footprints in snow, but when you're talking about like prints that have been, that went into mud and hardened, like prehistoric footprints, things like that, and an unknown DNA sample or strand. Like, I totally get that. I totally accept that there could have been a species of great ape or something that is long extinct that hasn't been identified. Like, I got no problem with that. 30 minutes ago, a family of Sasquatch, I got a little bit of a problem with, but I guess so. What is the thought for the supporters of the theory? What what are they? Do they think it's just this species of super intelligent ape that is intentionally evading being found?
Yeah, I can't speak for those people because that those Finding Bigfoot shows. I mean, I've hunted, and I've all, and also, had time in the military. Everything they're doing, nothing would come near them. They're stomping through the woods at night, and if anybody knows anything about nighttime, you can have it's extremely hard to move quietly through the woods at night, especially during winter with leaves and such. You can hear anybody fumbling and bumbling around in the dark. Even if these creatures are able to see in the dark, these people out there with cameras, they're howling and all that stuff, and I don't
So
know
so maybe
what
so
they're
maybe
thinking.
not maybe not super intelligent, maybe super aware and defensive, like a
Yes.
like a you know they're fleeing because they can spot us way before we can spot them.
Yeah, yeah, I would definitely say that that's more like that, and I think they keep their distance. But I just, if they do exist, I don't think they're intimidated by us, especially because it's not like they're out there with guns, and that's a whole other story. I'm sure, if Bigfoot is real, then hey, they're aware of boomsticks, right? But it's just very interesting to think that people actually go out there and try and find them. And I think the way that it was, if to do a show like that, you should take the approach of a hunter and tracking an animal. And I think you would have to take a weapon for defense if you're going to do it. I mean, I think maybe that's the only way you can try and get evidence. I mean, I've always felt you can't prove it till you have a dead body laying on the ground and we can examine it and say, yes, this is a Sasquatch. That's what everybody would need to believe it, because it's just still, we don't, I mean, like you said, I don't go out and find Bigfoot samples. You don't see me going to British Columbia to go hunt Bigfoot. I mean, I just watch what other people have done and just kind of think, yeah, maybe that's possible. Maybe it is. Listen to what they say, because this guy is totally convinced and he's expert in this stuff. And I'm like, footprint analysis stuff. I'm like, okay, maybe you are, maybe you're not. But I mean, if it is real, it's quite compelling. And to imagine there's a species, a large ape species or something like that, that is still alive that we haven't had communication with, it's not too far fetched either, because we still don't really know a whole lot of the creatures that live in our oceans.
Yeah. Well, and I will say, uh, Les Stroud. I don't know. Did you ever watch Survivor, Man? You're
Yeah,
familiar with that show?
is it still on?
No, it's not still on. He does. He still does. He still does the Survivor Man thing. He does videos on YouTube, but the TV show isn't on anymore. But it's a guy I really liked. I love that show. Survivor Man was a great show, and he is a big Bigfoot believer. And so he did several. um, like 2 and 3 part specials about finding Bigfoot or what, whatever. He did a few of them, and because it's somebody that I respect and I really enjoy, I watched them, because it was somebody, you know, that I knew was a sane and rational person that knew how to move around in the forest. He knew how to move around. He knew how to look for signs of things, things like that. So I was like, well, let's give it a shot. And he went around with people, from the area, searching for Bigfoot. And even with him doing a special on it, on TV, and there was just never anything compelling. I've just never seen anything compelling that would tell me that this is an actual, like I said, it probably, there could have been a great ape that we've never identified that roamed around however many, hundreds of years ago. I just, I just don't, there's no way we haven't seen it. I just don't buy it. I can't. I
And,
can't.
and that's what I mean when you're talking about Survivor, man, and even like in Alaska. I mean, I can't express to you what I mean by the term remote, because I've been in remote places in overseas where we're no radio contact to anybody. We're that remote. Even for the military, we did not have the technology with us that could reach the distances we were from our other the closest unit to us. I think we had our satellite trackers could tell you where we were at, but we couldn't talk to nobody. And at that time, the messaging system in our truck wasn't working very well. So, but when it comes to those type of remote areas, uh, they scare the crap out of me basically, because if you think about it, it's so remote, like nobody can come and get you. You are that far away from anything. If you don't have the skill set to forge or hunt or fish, to survive, provide shelter, like Survivor Man, you will die out there very quick. I mean, water is like one of the biggest things, is trying to find a fresh water source. But also, you think food, if you have a special diet. You can't be out in those remote places, and you literally are part of nature at that point. You are part of the ecosystem. Anything could eat you. You're susceptible to all the elements because you have no protection and no one there to be with you. That's the type of place, and I mean, days away from any help. This is the type of things I'm talking about. We don't know that people don't go there. People
Yeah.
don't go there and just explore.
Well, I'll say that, and that's why I love having these conversations, because it makes me think. And like I said, I don't want to just. I'm not just a cynic for cynicism's sake. That's not me. As you're talking, I start thinking, and I'm like, well, here's the deal. I do realize, I do accept. There are places that are so remote. Like you look, you talk about like the rainforest. It's kind of like the ocean. A tiny percentage of the rainforest has been explored, and then they go and explore and they find entire civilizations, 200 foot tall pyramids and things like that, hidden within that rainforest that nobody ever saw for hundreds of years. um, so I accept that, that there are places that are that remote that it is still possible there you will find places no human being has ever walked on, you know but then and as we're sitting there talking, it made me start thinking, I wonder if I've got a size bias. Because if you sat here and you told me there's a caterpillar that lives in a remote part of Nova Scotia that nobody has ever seen, I would say, okay. Like, I would just, sure, why not? There's parts of Nova Scotia that nobody's ever been to. And even if they have, maybe they didn't come across this caterpillar. I would say that's very plausible to me. So why is it that much more implausible just because what we're talking about is, supposed to be 7, 8 feet tall? So maybe I got a size bias that's making me more of a cynic than perhaps I should be, because if I can accept that there's a species of snake in the Amazon that nobody's ever identified, is it that much crazier to think that there's a great ape out there that nobody's. I mean, you're making me. You're stop,
Well,
stop making me question it.
well, the other thing too is, there's been so many stories for years from sailors and fishermen about the giant squid. But it isn't until recently that they actually have visual evidence on camera recording. They were baiting a squid, and it came in, and they have a video. So that's the biggest thing. People see them, never seen them alive. They've seen them wash up on the shore. So they exist. But getting that visual evidence of actually seeing it move, knowing it's not a hoax or anything like that, everybody got to see the video and said that is a giant squid. Look, they do exist.
Yeah,
So I mean, and I know
and they're absolutely massive.
yeah, the eyes like, yeah, it's like a foot around. I mean, it's ridiculous. I don't know, but it's very large and intimidating. I couldn't imagine swimming there. Even some of the jellyfish that they found are just huge. There's so many, but of course, our largest species in the world can only be in the oceans because of the fact that water supports their weight. But like terrestrial beings, that would be like an apex type predator, an ape species, and apes don't have very large numbers, and I would imagine this species would be too. That's why they're not just have some population boom. It's more survival. They know how to live within their means, and they're not looking to expand, maybe their numbers for survivability purposes. Because if they got too big, maybe they starve. So I mean, and I'm saying that's why we just don't see them. Encroachment upon land is why we see like snakes and alligators in Florida homes, or deer running through neighborhoods. All these animals get their environments getting encroached on, but no one's moving into these remote areas for one reason: there's nothing out there. We haven't pushed out there to where someone building a home out there being survivable and sustainable is for very few people that could do that, and they're probably on those, survival shows anyway, because it's pretty extreme to be out there like that all alone.
Well, I will say, I will absolutely not believe in Sasquatch until somebody does bring one down and load it in their truck and bring it to me. I'm not going to believe it. But sitting here having this conversation, which is without a doubt the longest conversation I have ever had about Bigfoot, I can see where people get pulled in, because once you start to question it, once you start to think about it, you can see the plausibility in it. So I definitely have a greater understanding for the people that do believe it, because they're sitting there having these conversations all the time, and they're digging, which I'm sure they're, selecting the stories and the articles and the things that support their theories, like we all do. Um, so it just pulls them in even deeper. I definitely get it, but like I said, it just doesn't make it just. I mean, you just and once again, man, it goes back to the freaking size of it. Something that large to sustain the numbers necessary to perpetuate the species. I just don't know how we've never seen one. I just can't. I can't.
Yeah, and I like I said, like even with that old Indian man saying that, they just avoid us, and that's why they're in the remote areas, because they know we're not going there. And if we come close, they know we are, and they get out of the way. I mean, I just think of it as survival. They've had, for whatever reason, they've decided to try to remove our contact with them, and every once in a while they get caught on camera. Uh, I was talking to my wife one time about this, and we talked about it. Like, why don't these people go out there and like hunt it? Like if I was going to go hunting, like hunting a Bigfoot, so I could have the evidence, I would hunt it from the hunting perspective. You talk about what the Survivor Man, his shows, those people that go and hunt, they know what a bear looks like when it beds down, or a deer, or this or that, or what this type of poop is, or what this scrape is, or where this water source is, or what food these organisms that eat. So they have an understanding of all these creatures that live in the regions that they're at. And when they find something that they can't explain, that's where the Bigfoot thing pops in there, because this is larger than something that I know. So that's why I'm saying that's where they come up with this idea. Maybe you don't understand, but it's like they know so much about the creatures that live in that environment that this is totally unusual and does not make sense why it is here. But also, I told the conversation my wife was about also saying, if I was out hunting this thing and I actually saw it, I honestly, if I was to pick my rifle up and put a bead on it, I don't know if I could for one reason. I've never seen anything like this before. How, I mean, it would probably take my breath away if it was real. And I honestly, it would just, even being able to hunt her and, putting a rifle up to kill something is not a problem for me. But if you saw something you weren't, you don't really know what you're looking for. You kind of think something hairy, but I don't know if anyone could not be in such awe that they actually took a shot.
Well, see, and I think that goes back, and I think it's a perfect segue into the alien debate as well. Is I think what you just said perfectly encapsulates both theories. Is here's this thing I don't understand, I can't explain, so let me attribute it to this. I think that's the exact same thing they're doing with the aliens and everything. Here's this thing that, hey, here's my son Jonah. Say hi, Jonah. Um, I can't explain it, so I'm going to make it this. And just like with the aliens, I think that there's got to be more. You've got to do better than I don't know what it is, so it's going to be this. You know, um, you see some weird track. Okay, that the fact that you don't think that it could belong to any bear species that you've ever seen, that don't mean it's a Sasquatch. You see an image of a, like you said, maybe a drone, maybe or who knows what, um but it flies in a way you've never seen. It's got to be an alien. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It could be any number of things, you know. So I think that's a perfect segue into the two, and maybe I'm more of a cynic than I realized, because my gut reaction is always to dismiss it, and that's probably not a very good mindset. There probably needs to be somewhere in the middle, and I think you probably land a little more somewhere in the middle, which is probably a better place to be. You know, that's one of the reasons I want to have talks like this, is so that maybe I can see some of my blind spots. I don't think I have one with Sasquatch, but it's definitely, it's interesting, and the points you make are valid. Like I said, not like you're a huge Sasquatch guy, but you know, playing the devil's advocate in that conversation, there's merit to it. There's merit to some of those things, um, but just the basic fundamentals of what's required to sustain life. You think about with the size they say these Sasquatch are. Think about how, and you're talking about maybe a family, which no animal, I don't know about that, but even if you did, if you had three of them, how much food would they eat in a day? Like, they wouldn't be able to just have a small cave that they live. They would have to cover incredible distances just to eat, right? I mean, am I crazy?
Well, you can't think of these creatures because when you're talking, I just think of all the biological things that go on, the cycling of matter and how things go. Is that apex predators can have low numbers. Once they get high numbers, they start to die off. And usually, if I'm to imagine this type of species, I believe it's kind of would do like we would, like some of the Indian tribes, they would follow the herds of buffalo around throughout the year to where they could sustain their meat. They may be following the caribou and elk that live in these very remote areas where there's a very high sustainable food source that is not being harvested by man, where these creatures could live. So I believe that's why I tell you that I'm not a, people would say just because I think that Bigfoot is plausible. It is plausible for there to be a species like that, as there are large apes, for another ape species to have that intelligence to be able to hunt and follow and maintain its numbers, intentional numbers. Or maybe they don't have, maybe each Sasquatch has one child, who we don't know how many babies they could have in their lifetime. We know how many, so there's just a lot out there that could possibly support that life, and it's just because we're not there. Just like there's so many things in the ocean that could support life too, just like those thermonuclear events could do that. We didn't know about that. And so the size I don't have an
Now,
issue with, or the food source is not an issue at all with
I
that.
will say, and I think I do think the ocean thing. I see what you're saying, but I think it's kind of a. I think it's kind of an unfair comparison because what we're talking about in the ocean are depths where light can't reach, right? I mean, we're not talking about they're swimming around in the ocean, 30 feet down and we just hadn't spotted them. They're at depths so deep, light can't even reach. And the only reason we ever found them is because they happened to die and come up to the surface. So I mean, I don't know that that's really a fair comparison to make because what we're talking about with Bigfoot is a creature that does live on Earth in light. I just don't think that's really fair.
Yeah. Well, and I just can't get back to this remoteness. I mean, there's so much of Alaska, so much of Canada that is just so remote, and I just like you said, even the rainforest, it's so remote, it's so dense. There's places that people have been and haven't been for a very very long time, and that's why I just really think that they found out where they could survive. If they're plausible, there's intentionality in their avoidance of us, and their numbers are kept small for some intentional reason to where they're not observable because that's it. Science is all about observation. We come back to what we see, so we try to tie it to something, but that's where that scientific mind comes in. It's like, well, what am I seeing? Can I explain that? What am I observing, and can I explain it? That's where the questioning mind comes into, as opposed to just like, I don't know what it is, so I'm not worried about it. And that's where my mind comes in about the whole Sasquatch conversation, is like understanding how these ecosystems work and the ecology that an apex predator plays in a role in its ecosystem. It could survive and it could avoid us totally, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I don't buy it. I don't know how something that large. I just I don't know. I mean, you're right. There are remote areas of the world. There are incredibly remote.
Extremely remote areas we've never been.
Yeah, I agree. I don't believe Sasquatch is walking
You
around.
don't you don't have to, and I mean it's like I said, it's just like my scientific mind is like, yes, it is plausible that that could be a thing. Do we have physical evidence? Do we have a corpse? Not that anyone's aware of, and and I think that's what everybody needs. Everybody needs the evidence to believe it. I mean, you know, I guess we're crazy because we believe in Christ, right?
Uh,
We haven't seen that guy, have we? Like,
that's
I
I
mean,
mean that is a very fair point. And I do wonder. I question. Once again, yeah, that's where, and I hope you guys that are watching this are enjoying this, and I hope that you take something from it because I really want to continue these conversations because I think that's where having talks like this and talking about things I wouldn't normally talk about, exploring concepts that I wouldn't normally explore because it's not part of paying my mortgage, um, are so compelling to me because I also think this video footage of the spacecraft and stuff that are doing weird things and belief in UFOs is it's more believed now than it has probably ever been. I mean, people, even the government is saying it. Like, there's more belief in UFOs now than there's ever been, and my lack of belief hasn't changed a bit. And so I wonder if I saw an alien, like if they if they found a ship and it crashed and they pulled the alien out and it was on TV, would I believe it? If they killed Sasquatch or they found let's say they, because I agree. I think if Sasquatch is real, they're so good at hiding. We're probably never going to hunt one because they must be incredibly good at it. But maybe they just found one that died of natural causes or whatever, and brought it to my front yard. I'd probably still not believe it. And that ain't good. That tells me that I need to open up to the possibility of something being of the plausible, a little more. Because until I can tell myself if you brought it and showed it to me, well then I would believe it. I'm not as open minded as I need to be.
Well, if at any given time that I happen to find an alien and I throw it in the back of my truck and I
Don't
bring
bring
it
it
over
here.
here to you,
Don't bring it
bro,
here.
I know for sure that I'm bringing it to you. You're the first person to prove. But I mean, because I just have to have somebody who's not going to believe my crazy story with me. Because
Yeah.
if I told them that I took it to my brother and took it over to Jace's house and at Jason's house I showed him the alien we found. I mean, we were both crazy.
I'd be saying, no, he didn't. No, he didn't. I didn't
I
see
got
it.
the pictures
We got the selfies with the alien.
with the alien.
Oh my gosh. All right, guys. Well, I guess that'll do it for this episode. But I've really enjoyed it. Jim, I hope you've enjoyed it too. You guys let us know what you think. Throw something there in the comments. Like I said, if you have anything else you want to talk about, if you have any other topics, or if you have insight into these topics that you want to bring up and you want us to readdress, we'll be happy to do it. Thank you all so much for watching. God bless. Jim, you got anything for him?
Not at all. See you next time, guys. Oh, I'm bringing the body right to you, man. Nobody else in this world that wants to bring dead bodies. That's what.
Let me see.
I got to my last.
Heck yeah, yeah. You just keep it right over there in stream.